Amidst the rising air pollution crisis in the national capital, the Delhi government postponed the implementation of the odd-even car rationing scheme after the Supreme Court questioned the effectiveness of the plan amidst the prevailing situation. Meanwhile, what does come in the picture is the Electric Vehicle Policy 2.0, which aims to target commercial vehicles to reduce pollution in the national capital. Well, the policy has in fact propagated the installation of purchase incentives of up to Rs 5,500 for e-cycles and Rs 30,000 for e-rickshaws, 4,500 private and public EV charging points, 250 battery swapping stations have been offered, and a lot more which is still underway. Well, in this telecast, we will be delving into the practicality, the cost breakup, and much more to expedite this vision of making New Delhi the EV capital of the country. We'll talk about this with some experts who understand this ecosystem. Samarth Kholkar, founder of Blive, joins us on the broadcast. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, president of the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research, also with us on the program. Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, with us on the program as well. Last but not the least, Amit Gupta, co-founder of Yulu, is joining us on the program as well. All right, Gautam, I'll begin with you. Well, the Parali hasn't gone anywhere as yet. The pollution levels continue to be at severe, dangerous levels. You know, there was a spell of rain in the last couple of days, but that too itself was not able to, in fact, curtail the kind of pollution that we have seen in North India, especially the national capital. In fact, Gautam is not with us at this point in time. I'm going to take this question to Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya. Dr. Bhattacharya, if you're there with us.
Yes.
Right. What does the EV industry need to do at this point in time? Because, you know, I understand it is quite, laudable to have an EV vehicle, electronic vehicle, as compared to a petrol vehicle. But there are impediments, there are problems when it comes to purchasing e-vehicles. Number one of those for people who drive four-wheelers is, of course, the cost. There have been some incentives which have been offered by the government, but they don't seem to be doing the motivation at this point in time. Diesel cars are still being sold. In fact, in the month of October, the number of diesel cars that were sold in our country is almost at par with the cars that were sold for petrol.
Yeah, even now, the difference between two cars of the same brand and the same make, one being electric and one being the internal combustion engine, there's at least a 5 lakh rupee difference, which means if we just convert it into the economics of it, you can buy 5,000 liters of petrol. So if you get a minimum of 15 kilometers per liter, you're getting 75,000 kilometers of free drive with the difference in the costing. So clearly the economics is still not there. And therefore, the government really needs to do more to make sure that the economics is there. Just like if you look at solar, the solar energy production is cheaper than coal-based electricity production, and therefore it makes natural economic sense to move over to solar, which is exactly what's happening. There is a explosion of solar generation that's happening because the economics works out. It's cheaper to generate solar energy. And the same way, if we can bring the EV economics to a level where it is cheaper to drive a EV vehicle, I think that's what is really needed. Now, in addition, obviously, there are the infrastructure issues about charging points and so on and so forth. Those normally get solved once there is a demand in place. Obviously, it can also be treated as a chicken and egg problem that unless you can charge your car, why will you buy a car? But more or less, people are those who have bought EV vehicles are able to charge them at home. The challenge happens when you are living in an apartment complex and you don't have access to what kind of infrastructure you can set up at the parking lot of your apartment complex. And that's something that the RWs of the apartment complex have to get together and solve. And again, as I said, if there is a demand, the solutions around the infrastructure will start happening on its own. Where the government really needs to step in is, for example, if you look at Delhi, half of the GST being collected on cars is coming to the Delhi government, and half goes to the central government, half comes to the Delhi government. Why isn't the GST being given back if the government is really serious about it? And similarly, why doesn't the central government also pitch in and give back that money if they believe that that vehicular pollution is really the key reason why there is so much of pollution happening in the country or in this region, in the NCR region, then surely they should be putting as much effort as possible, giving back what they're getting from the industry in terms of taxes, so that the cost of such vehicles come down, and that will obviously make NCR a EV capital for the country.
Amit Gupta, co-founder of Yulu, is also with us on the program. Amit, if you can hear me, thank you for speaking with NewsX. Amit, what's the solution? How can more and more people be incentivized to adopt this technology, which is new, is attractive, is being used sporadically, but it is not entirely, being supported by some notions, which the government also has?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, this is one of the hottest topics right now. I think my thought process is very different. Unlike many experts who believe that if we give incentive to personal cars, that will solve the problem of pollution. Actually, I don't think so. I think rather than fighting the car ownership or vehicle ownership, we should try to convert the miles, the kilometer, from the dirty one to cleaner one. And if you think that as the atomic unit, then more and more focus will be given to commercial usage. When I commercial usage means that the usage will be more, or the focus will be electrification of buses, electrification of taxis, electrification of the last mile and the first mile. If you look at any large city across the globe, be it let's say Tokyo, which is heavily populated, we never hear about bad pollution. We never hear about traffic jam. And the reason is that they all basically have great public transportation. Same thing has to happen in India, especially Delhi. I think Delhi is in a very strong position. Not only it has one of the best public transportation network with more than 400 kilometers of metro and thousands of buses. We just need to go and focus. If we can increase a little bit more density of, let's say, of the buses, convert them to electric buses. We should promote carpools. We should promote the first mile and last mile. And if that can happen, we can move actually millions of people. That will actually convert the atomic unit, which I'm talking about, the usage, not the unit of the car or unit of the vehicle. And suddenly we'll see a huge difference in terms of the pollution, in terms of the traffic congestion. And all of this will be far more affordable, which also an important element about our country, because we do not have infinite money in the hands of people for the mobility piece. And the best part is, when you talk about commercial, the companies have sorted out the infrastructure for charging. So they know how to charge the vehicles, and they've created hubs. So companies like Uber, who is trying to do some infrastructure for vehicle charging, Blue Smart actually has done an amazing job. So forget all of those problems that where we have to convince RWA that you have to provide the charging station. Ditch all of that. Just focus on electric cars. By the way, I was in China some time back. I saw almost every taxi ride I took, they were all electric. So it is possible, and I think that's where
Amit, what is the expectation from the government from a company like yours?
So from our perspective, more and more favorable policies for the first mile, last mile, because that's where people will start using public transportation. I think if they can also provide more and more focus on the public infrastructure of the charging, which I think the new policy promotes that. Delhi government also has been very, very visionary in providing this new mobility EV 2.0 policy, where the commercial usage of mobility is also being electrified pretty soon. So if they can just double down on that, walk the talk in terms of implementation, I think we will be far better off. And I know that there's a even and odd debate. To me, it's not maybe we are not ready yet, but if we can do some of these measures, then I don't think so. First of all, we actually need even and odd. Even in China, they did that for some time, but that was not the long-term solution. Long-term solution is to incentivize people to move in groups, be it carpool or the buses and the metro. And if we can rectify that, our problems will be solved. So there will not be a debate of even and odd at all, because people will not be basically preferring their own car, one person in one car, that to ICE-powered vehicle. That does not work at all.
Amit, there are also issues with the batteries that are used for electronic vehicles, and disposing them off, that is also viewed upon as a feasible, a possible biohazard for the community. How do you think that is supposed to be navigated, and how can the government and people wrap their loyalties towards electronic vehicles in lieu of that unfavorable point?
Yeah, I think there are several solutions. First of all, industries are anyway moving away from lead acid, which had a lot of environmental hazards. So now we are talking about NNC and LFP as a chemistry. So these are lithium ion, as you know. And lithium ion, the way the cell chemistry actually works, there's a lot of second life and third life opportunity which are possible. And last but not the least, I think government also need to put even a very strict framework, make OEM responsible, make the consumer responsible, maybe take a tax upfront, like in California when you buy a bottle of water or a cold drink, they charge the recycling fee upfront. So same way they can make people accountable. And today's world where every car is geo-tagged and fast-tagged and whatnot, it is actually not something which is crazy dream. So from a purchase to a end of life cycle, one actually has to be then very responsible towards the battery recycle. And the last and the important part is also India with our very efficient recycling industry. If there's an economic value of that battery pack, which has been used twice or thrice in different industrial application, I think this whole cycle can be made to work. And I'm also very hopeful that with newer technology being worked, there will be better technology which are far more less burdensome on the environment. Just like we have made a leapfrog in terms of lead acid to now lithium ion. I'm sure that future actually has pretty much interesting chemistries being unfolded. And today, I think it is possible because now we have a digital infrastructure to make it happen from a compliance perspective.
Amit, also, how do you think people can be incentivized to buy electric vehicles? There still seems to be this huge hangover for petrol and diesel cars for various reasons. How do you think that mold can be broken through?
Yeah, if I break the problem into two components, first of all, personal vehicles. And as I said, that I don't want to fight the four-wheeler electrification to start with. I think two-wheeler is a very, very good start. More than 80% of the vehicles in India are two-wheeler. And it is absolutely practical and economical financially for someone to just go for the petrol scooter. And it is a no-brainer decision. And I think people are liking, and we are seeing how penetration of electric scooter is anyway going up month on month. And I think the time is not near where you will see more than 50% coming on the EV side, and suddenly ICE two-wheelers will be kind of a Stone Age product. And that's the one big important thing I think of. The second thing is, rather than solving for personal vehicle ownership, as I said, we actually need to focus on the usage of the cleaner vehicles. That will change the game for us. So these are the two blocks I will think about. I will not solve for personal cars, as I said, as a priority. Focus will be commercial vehicles, followed by the personal, that two-wheeler, and then three-wheeler. And I think suddenly we will see that 90-95% of the usage in the country will be electric, and all of us will be very happy.
All right, Gautam, what's your take on this transition, this problem that we are witnessing? Is EV the solution to this? And if so, then why are there so many hurdles at the policy level as well as at the ground level, the social level, in the acceptability of electronic vehicles?
Well, I think it's early days in the technology, which is one problem. The second thing is announcements are a dime a dozen when it comes from the government. Implementation is very, very poor. I don't see very many EV stations. I don't see any real effort to bring down the cost of an EV car. And therefore, adoptability is a matter of skepticism because by and large, as Amit Gupta just pointed out, I think it is easier and better for the government to concentrate on public transport, on taxis, if the taxis are tending to do it on their own. and eventually get around to private cars, because convincing people there is a much harder task. If the government itself is convinced, it should show some evidence by going electric across the board. It hasn't done so. It just makes announcements, and that's about the length and breadth of it. I, for one, am most skeptical. Technology is another issue. I don't believe that there will be a proper disposal as things stand. Very many other issues of pollution are completely not tackled. The Parali burning being a case in point, and neither the center nor the state governments have been able to touch it. What they claim is mainly statistical. It used to be 70, now it's 50. Who knows what their measurements are? All we know is that the air is bad to us for the last 5 to 7 years. And to concentrate on vehicles as a source without concentrating on garbage, parali, open burning of refuse and so on is not going to work. EV itself has 100 issues, but so do the others. And none of them are being tackled by the government. They talk like this when the situation becomes grim every year, and then they forget all about it for the rest of the year.
Samarth Kolkar, EVs cannot be a stopgap arrangement. World economies, a number of countries understand that EV is the future. Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, is going around trying to convert Saudi Arabia into a tourist hub, because he understands that petrol is not going to be of any value in the next few decades. It's going to be the age of technology and the EV industry. So the preparation has already started, perhaps 20, 30 years in advance. Do you think India also needs to be, if not ahead of the curve, at least on the curve when it comes to tackling pollution and making sure that we are future ready when it comes to electric vehicles?
First of all, thank you for having me on the forum, and season's festive greetings to everyone. As you rightly said, and my good friend Amit also concurred to a large extent, I think what we need to first understand is, if we want to change the entire vehicular environment, it has to begin at a citizen level, right? When I say citizen level, there are three key things that we should first address. It is about awareness, it is about giving accessibility to EVs, and third is creating that ease of ownership. I think these are three very critical factors. While we may assume that everybody knows everything about EVs, when you go down to the last person, I think that awareness is still missing. Everybody knows a few things about it, but not everything. And that's where I think both organizations like ours, as well as government organizations, will play a pivotal role. Besides that, when you look at it at an individual level, again, department, structuring it on the commercial as well as on the personal side of things. On the commercial side, we've seen that in the two-wheeler space, at least, there's a huge transition which has already taken place towards electric. And that is primarily coming not purely from the environmental factor, but also from the economics of the entire piece, because it makes it much, much more economical to be on an electric vehicle to deliver a parcel than otherwise. On the personal side, I think it's a chicken and egg story, as we keep calling it. I think more the infrastructure, I think more will be the comfort and the ease of the customer to kind of transition from using a ICE vehicle to a electric vehicle. And I think that is happening. Today, in terms of charging, we're seeing that Delhi has seen a tremendous growth in terms of installation of charging stations, right? And societies, as my panelists mentioned, have been much more open about installation of these charging stations without the fears that used to reside earlier. So it is a gradual movement. And when we look at, beyond the Indian borders, I was there at a Future Sustainability Summit in Dubai just about a few weeks back. That's where they spoke about cities which were built on the premise of sustainability, where they are not just looking at environment as a factor in sustainability, but also creating communities and citizen movements which are focused on ensuring that there is a zero carbon footprint created. I think that is something which needs both the public as well as the policy to come together. And I think the EV policy in that sense would be at least one good step in the right direction. When you look at incentives also for the individuals, I think a major concern which has come, and we at VLI, we operate almost in 30 plus locations across India, so it is not a view of a single state. The biggest issue has been financing. People want to purchase electric vehicles, but there are very few financial institutions who are out there offering the best, financial plans or loans for people to transition to electric. And I think that is where the big PSU banks should step in and big financial institutions should step in with some backing from the government, where they can offer good interest rates and help this transition to become faster. I think there's a lot to be done, but few steps in the right direction, I think, will get us there faster.
All right. Dr. Bhattacharya, the role of educating people in terms of adapting and adopting to this new technology, how crucial is that, and what kind of an onus and urgency does the government need to show if this global climate crisis is going to get worse?
So, let me start with the last part that you said about the global climate crisis. As a whole, as a public, we'll be crying hoarse about it. But when it comes to putting down the money on the table to purchase something which will lead to lesser emissions, there are very few people who will put that money on the table. So this is, again, as I mentioned earlier in other of your shows, this is game theoretic completely. Individually, they'll be making optimizations, which as a whole, as a public, does not make sense. So therefore, how do we make sure that what is public good is also followed individually? At the end of the day, it's economics which drives the behavior of individuals. As Amit mentioned, people are anyways buying the two-wheelers because it makes the battery two-wheelers because it makes perfect economic sense. If you look at commercial vehicles, again, since they're driving over 50,000 kilometers, it makes perfect economic sense to go buy the electric four-wheel taxis, which is what Blue Smart and others are doing. Even Uber has started having the electric taxis because it makes economic sense. But when it comes to individual purchases of, let's say, four-wheelers, it still does not make economic sense. And therefore, as long as the government has pushed the economics to a level where it makes sense to start purchasing for personal consumption electric vehicles, people will automatically do it. In fact, as Gautam mentioned, it's extremely difficult to educate a large number of people because behavior change is one of the toughest thing to do in a society. So we'll be literally breaking our head if you're trying to attempt and do that where the economics doesn't make sense for each of the individual users. I mean, let's come to the point. You get the cheapest ICU car at about 5 rupees or 5 lakhs on road, whereas the cheapest electric vehicle is 9.25 lakhs on road. So it's almost double of the cheapest ICU, the ICE engine car that you have available. So why will you pay double the amount? There has to be an economic compulsion that will push you towards it. If you're not driving 50-70,000 kilometers, it just does not make sense to put this upfront money on the table and purchase your vehicle. Obviously, aggregation of transportation is another good way. Also, in terms of electrification of transportation, metro is a great movement forward. But if you look at the last mile connectivity, again, something that Amit's company has been doing and doing extremely well, the challenge is that where will these last mile connectivity drive? There's complete chaos. The urban planning has not catered to it, not just in India for that matter. If you look at Paris, Toronto, Singapore, they have banned the electric scooters, which is not the same as our electric scooters. These are those small scooters which used to go on top of the sidewalk, which used to go on top of the cycling track. We don't even have a sidewalk to begin with because our last mile could also be walking, but we don't have the ability for people to walk down back to their home. So there's a lot of urban planning that needs to be done. A lot of this is straight at the door of the government. They need to step in and start solving these last mile infrastructure issues. The technology issues will get solved by folks like Yulu and Amit, and there'll be many others who will be coming in and solving it, as long as the public part of it is being done by the government.
All right. Well, so there needs to be an impetus from both the sides in terms of the acceptability with which electric vehicles are going to be plying on the roads of our country. But there is no denying that it is the future, and there is also no denying that there seems to be a disparity. There are anomalies in terms of why should you buy an electric vehicle vis-a-vis a petrol or a diesel one, because obviously, like Dr. Bhattacharya said, it is all about cost for a country like India.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.